Guys, take a look at this. Just came out of the oven. It's cooling down right now. That is a beautiful pecan pie. I tell you what, wait till you give this recipe a try. Well, I think you're going to have a new one for your recipe book. Howdy folks, welcome back to Texas Cooking Today. On this episode, we're making pecan pie. Now guys, pecan pie, let me explain. What could be more southern, what could be more Texas than pecan pie? People hear about it all the time. You go to Texas, you gotta try the pecan pie. We do, we have beautiful, big, sweet pecans growing all over this state. Right now, there's a pecan tree growing no more than about 50 feet away from me, okay? They're everywhere. So being that we're surrounded by these trees that produce a most delicious nut, well, why not use it? So one of the things that we enjoy is a pecan pie, and this is not something, well, who invented it? Let's figure this out. Who invented pecan pie? Okay, the French came, landed in the Louisiana area there, met the Indians turned them on to these nuts, okay? So the French, doing what French do, hey, food, hey, let's cook with it. So they combined it with a chess pie and was born the pecan pie. So is it a French dish or is it an American dish? I would say it's a French-inspired American dish. There you have it. So what we're going to be making is this fabulous tasting pecan pie. And the way I make mine is, well, somewhat similar to the way Abraham Lincoln enjoyed his pecan pies. So guys, come on over this way. Let's look at these fabulous, wonderful goodies that we have to bake with. And let's get started making the fabulous tasting pecan pie. Come on. Okay guys, look at all these cool ingredients. Now, if you're one of those that likes saving recipes, get ready to write this down because I'm about to give you all the measurements for the filling on this pie. I'm also going to teach you in this program how to make your own crust, so you get to learn both right here. Now, this one, 1 cup brown sugar packed, okay? So that's what I have there, a cup of brown sugar, 1/4 of a cup of butter. Now you need this butter to be about room temperature so that it will be easy to soften. We also have 3 eggs right back over here in the corner. I have 1½ cups of chopped pecans. Now you don't want them fine chopped, guys, kind of a coarse chop. Now let's get past one argument right here. Some people say, no, use whole pecans only. Okay guys, here's the thing. This is a pecan pie. I want the flavor of these pecans to run throughout the custard of the pie, not to be just locked up within themselves. Pecans have a paper on the outside of the nut itself. That paper is going to prevent those essential oils from leaching into the that sugary custard while it's baking. But if you chop them up, the essential oils get released and you get a better flavor throughout your custard. This is important. In the other sugars you will need, I have here 1/2 of a cup of Karo. If you try this pie and you find it slightly too sweet, reduce your Karo syrup by 1/4 of a cup. Here we have 1/4 of a cup of molasses. Yummy, yummy molasses. And that was the thing about Abraham Lincoln. He liked his pie, his pecan pie, with molasses. Now, as far as how much he liked in it, I don't know. But I do know that much of it. That's historical fact. I have here 1/2 of a teaspoon of salt. Right here, this is 1 teaspoon vanilla. And right here I have 2 tablespoons of bourbon. Also, if you would like for the top of your pie to be nice and pretty, because it has pecan halves that are unbroken across the top. Get some of those to decorate the top of your pie with. That way, you know, if you're concerned about using the chopped nuts, this way you get the best of both worlds, okay guys? So you get the beauty plus the flavor all wrapped up in one fantastic package. Now what we're going to be doing is combining all of these ingredients in just a special way to produce a fantastic custard. And I'm going to show you how we do that. But first, before we can get busy making that custard, we have to fix a crust. Now the reason we do the crust first, guys, is because we want that custard to bake the minute it hits the crust, okay? So it's a matter of timing, okay? What I'm going to do here is start off with that crust, and that's a very simple recipe. Let's take a look at that. Okay guys, we're all set up here to make us a pie crust. Now, the recipe I'm using here, this is a double crust recipe. So if you're going to only make one, then use a single crust recipe if you'd like, which is half of this. So you'll know what I have in the way of ingredients. This is 2 cups of flour, and you can use an all-purpose flour. I'm using a bread flour. It's a little higher gluten content, and I just normally buy that stuff, so that's what I have on hand at the moment. I have 1 teaspoon of salt. Now here's another thing you might want to know about salts. A lot of times when I'm cooking on my show, you see me sprinkling salt into things, and it's large granule. That is kosher salt. It's sea salt. What I'll do if I'm going to bake is I'll put that salt into a mortar and pestle and mill it down just a little bit, and that way I get a finer grind. Now if you're just using a table salt already, a fine grind table salt, that's fine. But remember, they do measure and weigh differently, okay guys? The kosher salt versus the finer granule salt that you normally see in shakers and stuff, that stuff is measures different, weighs different. So if you're going to use kosher, mill it down first, and that's what I did. I have here some milk. Now on your milk, all you're going to need for this is going to be about 4 to 6 tablespoons, and that's what I put in this, was 6 tablespoons of milk. I may or may not need all of that, okay? And that just depends on the flour, which batch of flour you got that time, and a lot of other factors, because you know, flour's kind of funky. I have here, this is 1 stick of butter cut up, and I have a couple of tablespoons, or up to 1/3 of a cup if you wish, of lard, guys. Now I know that does sound nasty, doesn't it? Lard, but believe it or not, it's better for you than shortening. Lard has no trans fats. Lard, believe it or not, even though it sounds weird, lard produces truly the very finest pastry crusts in the world, guys. So if you want your pie crust to truly stand out, to be the one that people say, oh my gosh, how do they get their pie crust so flaky? If you want yours to be that pie crust, this is the recipe you need to look at. Now there's a couple of rules of thumb when it comes to making pie crust, and here it is. Ingredients got to be cold. This stuff, all of it, just now came out of the refrigerator. It's ready to be made. I'm busy talking and it's warming up, but even still, I'm going to be able to keep it cold enough to work this out. Now before I get started making this pie crust, you want to go ahead and set your oven right now for anywhere from 425 to 450 degrees. We're going to set the crust by baking it at a high temperature, and this is a little known fact, something a lot of people don't know. If you don't want your crust to change dramatically in the pie or in the pie pan as you're getting it to set it at a higher temperature. It happens faster. The crust doesn't balloon or misshape itself as often when you do it that way. Okay, let's get on with the correct way to make a pie crust. Let us start with our dry ingredients. Anytime you're baking, guys, and you have dry ingredients, you need to combine those first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my salt, I'm going to sprinkle it right down across the top of my flour. Watch me use a whisk, and that just kind of gets that combined so it's not all clumped in one spot. Okay? Now guys, to do a good pie crust, you can do it with a fork, but that's a lot harder than using a pastry blender. Now the whole idea here, if you'll notice a pastry blender, and this is an old one, this is a very, very old one. This was like a 35 or 40-year-old pastry blender. But the tines right here, these will slice through the butter. And that's the whole idea, is to make little tiny specks of fat intermingled amongst the flour. The whole idea behind having the ingredients cold, guys, is you do not want the fats melting into the flour at all, okay? There has to be a perfect separation between fat and flour. Now the reason, the idea behind that, what's going on there, is you want thin layers of fat and then flour, or dough actually, and then more fat, then more dough. And when you're talking about, let's say, a puff pastry, for example, this is very similar, very much akin to a puff pastry. Let's see, I'm having a hard time with my lard. There it goes, it's breaking apart now. Puff pastries, the way they make those, they make first a dough, and then they take that dough and wrap it over a block of butter and flatten it out, and then fold it and flatten it again, and fold it and flatten it again, and fold it and flatten it. And between refrigerating and folding and flattening, they develop dozens of very, very, very thin layers of butter and flour, or dough, I should say. And that's all we're going to do here, but it's just a little more random when it comes to a pie crust, okay? The size pieces that we're wanting here, the whole pieces that we're wanting, are going to be about the size of a pea. And that's sort of an old-fashioned rule, guys, and it's sort of a universal rule. But we want little pieces of fat that break down to about the size of a pea, to about that right there. So I'm most of the way there. I've just got to give it a moment more. And the pieces are separated very well from the flour, and that was because of how cold everything was. So that cold is such an important part of this process. Now, I have my little pieces. Immediately, I need to start working in my milk. So I'll pour in just a little bit, not a lot. Now what's important here, what we're doing is we're activating the gluten in that flour. As that gluten becomes activated, it clings and it builds this very glue-like structure that will bring the whole thing together. And we're almost there, just a little more. All right, now it's gathering, and once it starts gathering together, that very moment, it is time to roll it out, okay? This needs no more working, guys. I don't have to knead it or anything like that. So let me show you this next step. Okay, now let's bring forward our flour. Anytime that you're going to be working with dough, pastry, or anything like that that is a wheat-based flour, you're going to need to have the surface you work on to be floured, as well as the hands that you're working with to be floured. So let's just sprinkle a little over our board here. And that looks like a lot, doesn't it? But don't worry. Watch this. Now this, I told you I don't have to really work it, but what I have to do is get it all brought together as a ball. And that's what I'm doing now. So I'm intentionally trying not to really work it much, because kneading this the way you would like a bread dough isn't going to improve it. That'll actually cause it to kind of fall into ruin. Now if you'll notice, all I'm going to do is gently pack it a little bit from a couple of different directions. There we are. Now one thing I can say about pie crusts, guys, they're finicky, all right? So if you see it cracking on the edges and stuff like that, okay, don't lose any sleep over that, all right? You see how I rub that flour out across the surface? Very important. You see, I'm not using that rolling pin, am I? Let me explain something. You see this? This is what they call a pastry knife. Sometimes pastries will stick to what you're working on, okay? Having these around is nice. And I'm seeing in my pastry, if you'll look here, you can see whole pieces of fat all over it. It's speckled with it. And that's exactly what makes for very, very good quality pie crust, guys. Okay, so we're on our way. And what I'm doing is I'm checking my thickness, feeling it. Pie crusts are volatile, guys. They just love to tear. If it gets a chance to tear and ruin your day, it will do it. It loves that, okay? So just be prepared for the eventuality, especially if you're new at this, that that's probably going to happen. If you're prepared for it, you'll be all right. So as you can see, there's the edges, they crack apart, but my thickness is almost perfect. So what I want is to get my pie dish up here and to get this into it without this breaking or tearing. You saw how I rolled it up over my roller just a moment ago? Well, guess what, guys? I'm about to do that again. We have that pie dish handy, so I'll set it right down here. I'm going to take my crust very gently, lift, watching those edges because that's where it likes to start tearing from. Now, don't push, okay? Lift, all right? This is an important little lesson for you guys. If you go pushing on this, that doesn't work. You have to lift and work it in from the edge over, all right? If you try pushing down on the inside, what'll happen is that it's just going to simply tear on you. You see how I gently lift and let it roll over into that pie dish. You see I'm feeling and seeing it center down on that lower edge now where it needs to be. So it's forming into it beautifully. Okay, here's where you have to kind of choose what kind of crust you want, okay? Okay, for a pecan pie, it's always open top, guys. You never do a top crust on a pecan pie. But when it comes to the edge, what are you going to do there? Are you going to do some decorative edge where it's all frilly around the edge? Well, that's easy. You know, you lift with 2 fingers and push with 1 to shape that edge. If you want, you can cut a little extra material and fold it over to make a thicker crust up on that edge. Ooh, people love thick crust. I happen to be one of them. If you want, and you have a pie dish like this that rolls back on that upper edge, you can simply cut it smooth around the edge. And that way you get professional looking results without having to really throw a lot of work into it. I'll take my pastry scissors. I'm going to work my way around. I'm leaving about an inch overhang. This is not too unusual. This is a very common thing that a lot of, you'll see a lot of pastry chefs, professionals do this. Save your material. And the reason I say that is because, hey, in the kitchen, when I have pie crusts and things like that, I get really inspired and I start wanting to make other things. So I'll probably pull out some fruit and use the remainder of this pie crust to make some little fruit pies. And I'm talking about, you know, just the little hand-folded pies, what people call fried pies. Now, there's nothing perfect to the edge of that crust, all right? Nothing at all. So don't think that I'm sitting here going to do something that's going to make you look bad because it's too difficult. Now, what I'm doing here, I'm going to simply roll that crust over on that top edge. And as I said, there's not going to be a major professional appearance here. So what I'm doing, just simply as you see, I roll it up with a thumb and push it over. Now, once I kind of get it in place, then I can form it and work it, okay? And get it where I kind of want it to be. Now that rippled edge, as I told you before, if you wanted to lift this and do this, and you do that all the way around, and that gives you that little funky ripple on the side. Isn't that cool? Now normally, guys, when it's just me, like I told you, I'll normally lay it over the sides and take my knife and just cut smooth off, and that's what I do for my home thing. But guess what? This is for the show, so I guess it really needs to look a little bit better. So basically I'm taking one finger and poking it in over another. And you can do 2 fingers on the inside and 1 on the out, or 1 on the inside and 2 on the outside, whichever. It gives you the same ripple, okay? So we got one there. We got one here. I'm trying to give you a better view, and it's hard for me. There, there. All right, and back at my beginning. There's a couple of high spots, and I'm going to fix those. But other than that, a fairly decent looking pie crust, I think. Once it's filled, it won't look horrible like it does now. All right, pack it off on the inner edge. That's all I'm doing there, just squeezing down to pack that edge down. And remember, that inside isn't so important. Most of that's going to be covered up. It's that outer edge that you're looking to make look pretty. Okay, well, we have our pie crust all fixed up. Important, guys, remember, we spent a lot of effort making sure our fats don't melt into the flour on this, into our pastry. It's important that we get this in the oven and get it hot as fast as possible. Okay, guys, this has had about 5 minutes in the oven. It's just slightly puffy up underneath there, but only slightly. There was a slightly dome, so what I did is I just lifted one edge with my knife very gently, and it vented all that steam right out, and it fell right down where it should be. So here we have it, wonderfully formed crust, ready to go for our pecan pie. All right, now down here we have our butter. I want to take, there we go. Now what I'm doing is I'm just making sure that it is soft enough to want to cream. Now guys, here is the thing. When you're going to make a custard, what we're doing here is we're actually just making a basic egg custard, okay? But to do that, I need to do a couple of things. One is I need to incorporate some air into my ingredients. And one of the best ways to do that is to work the air into the fat. So we do what we call creaming. And that's what I'm going to do right now. Let's get you a better look at this, okay? Okay guys, that butter's nice and soft. I'm going to start getting that brown sugar, and what I want to do is I'm just going to kind of break it up a little bit and get it dropped down in there. Now when you're putting ingredients into a mixer, if you're not used to using these machines, then something you need to know. Don't throw it all in there at once, or it's going to throw part of it back out at you, okay? So take it easy on your ingredients. Now this is an old world recipe, and we're using an old world technique right here where the butter and sugar would be creamed together to improve the quality of the custard. And that's what we're about to do. And sometimes you got to break things free from the sides on mixers. Doesn't matter what kind of mixer you have, that's going to happen. Even, you know, I've seen those have special paddles on them. I've seen those occasionally need to be knocked down from above the paddle, so it still happens. Now my eggs are going to need to be cracked, so while that's happening, down here on the side, I'm just going to go ahead and take care of my egg business. Now back over here, I'm going to slow this down, and I'm going to work my eggs in. And if you'll notice, I'm in no big rush with it either. I just kind of let them flop over in there one at a time, even though they're all in one bowl. Okay, I don't want to overwork that. Next thing, I'm going to break off what's on my beater there. Again, hit the side of that bowl. I'm going to go ahead and put in my corn syrup. I also want to add in that molasses. And this makes for such a robust, rich flavor for a pecan pie. It's one of the best flavors I've known of ever adding to a pecan pie. Very gently, I'll work my salt down into this mixture. Let's get that vanilla in there. Oh yeah. Get our bourbon. Make sure that you have turned that oven down to 350 degrees. Now guys, look at that beautiful custard that we have mixing up there. It's satiny, it's smooth, and this is going to do a beautiful job of cooking up for us. That's exactly what we're looking for right there. Anytime that you're going to reach into your bowl with a spatula, and that's what these rubber items here are, it's a spatula, then you want to make sure that that machine is turned off. Never put fingers or tools of any kind down in one of these bowls, because I'm going to tell you right now, this machine especially is known for breaking things, okay? Including fingers and arms and stuff like that. So be very, very, very careful if you have a robust mixer. Now, if you'll notice, we are developing a beautiful caramel color. It has kind of a hazy hue to it, and that's absolutely spot on perfect. All right, guys, that didn't take that long, did it? Now, I'm gonna get this off of here. I'll scrape off a little bit of the excess, but you know what? I never really go crazy about this, because as far as I'm concerned, there's just not enough on there for me to lose any sleep over. Right now, I need to put my nuts into this and gently just kind of stir them in. You don't have to overwork it. At this point, I'm ready to go into my pie dish with my custard filling mix. Isn't that gorgeous? Beautiful, beautiful appearance. All right, guys, we have our crust there that was prepped in the oven just a little bit earlier. If I can't get all of this mixture to fit into that crust, because it did pull back on me a little bit, I'm not going to lose any sleep over that, guys. Okay, and I suggest you not do that either, okay? I don't want to overfill this. There we go. I want to leave about a quarter to half inch between the custard and the top of that pastry. Now this just needs to be placed in our oven at 350 degrees, and let's get it baked up. Oh, that's right. We were going to decorate it, weren't we? Well, pecan pie always deserves pecans. So guys, just get busy and dot yours off. So as you see, you don't have to be any kind of a special artisan to get something really special going on your pie, right? Now here's the thing. My cut lines are in between these. That's the way I've lined them up, okay? So you get a row of pecans on each slice, guys. How's that for really cool thinking right there? Now, all I have to do is get this little gem up in the oven. Let's get it baked, and it's all done. Here we go. There it is. That's going to take about 35 to 40 minutes, guys. Okay, guys, I have just now pulled this out of the oven. I did have one tiny problem with this, and that was with a little bit of an overflow right here. And when I look under it, it only goes down about a half inch, but nonetheless, it's going to make that crust right there almost impossible to remove without knifing it out of there. So I guess that's going to be the chef's piece right there. All right, so this is just kind of finished cooling down, and guess what? Our pie is finished up and ready to go. Let's take a close look at that. Well, being that I haven't done any baking for about 25 years, I would say that came out pretty darn good. Well, guys, it looks like we have had a day of baking and waiting for it to cool. My pecan pie came out. It had a little spot on the edge here where it bubbled over just slightly and made contact with the glass down there, if you'll see. And anyway, I took a knife and just kind of cut that spot loose to make sure that the pie was loose in the dish, okay? And I could do that just by moving it slightly, and that proved it to me. I'm going to do something that's really, really hard to do, and that is to remove a pie from its dish and have it come out looking all nice and pretty. It can't be done with all pies, guys, only a few, and this is one of the few that you can sometimes get away with this. So what I want to do is I want to try to get this pie on this plate right side up. Now what I'm going to do to help make that happen is I'm going to start with this one. and I want to put that pie right on top of it. And whoops, sliding around. I want to hold the two together and just flip them over, okay? Boom, just like that, okay? Reach under this and lift it off. There we go. Now, working quickly, I'll center him up on that and reverse my process. I hope it came out okay. And there it is, folks. There's the spot that stuck to the glass a little bit, but guess what? It came out okay despite that, okay? So there we have it. One beautiful pecan pie, all plated up and ready to be cut and served. Get a piece here. I'm going to cut from here right on out. There we go. Do that again. And of course, we'll need a nice place to put that. Yum-y. Oh boy, I can't wait to dig in on this one. So there you have it, guys. Beautiful pecan pie. Well, there it is, guys. Pecan pie. So as you see, not such an ordeal, but you need to get a few things right in order to get it just right. Okay, so we have a beautiful pecan pie here. Not too much custard, not too much sweet going on. A whole lot of pecan going on. Beautiful, beautiful flaky crust. And I fixed this wonderful little whipped topping. That's a bourbon cream topping. All that is just about a cup of cream and about 3 tablespoons of sugar and 2 to 3 tablespoons of bourbon. You have to add the bourbon after it has become fluffy and light, okay? So that's all you have to do there. And look at that, guys. Beautiful, beautiful. That is pecan pie deluxe, okay? Look at all those nuts. Normally all you see down in there is just a bunch of custard with nuts floating on top. No, no, not on this pecan pie. Let's make it the right way. All right, now. First of all, the snap of big pecans. Didn't over chop them. The flavor, pecan flavor, just slaps you in the face. It's not hidden in this pie. It's really up front. And the flavor is so good on it, guys. Just so delicious. Now, this crust, I mean, it's just, even on the bottom center, it's flaky and coming apart. Okay, I mean, right down in there, see that, guys? Beautiful crust on this. Beautiful flaky effect from that crust. If you want the best crust ever, use that lard. Oh, wow. And I'm one of those guys that likes a real thick crust on the top edge of there. Something really meaty and good to go with all that sweet. Wow. I'll tell you what, I'm going to be enjoying this. Pecan pie, it's a balance. Too sweet and it's too sweet. Not sweet enough, it's just not sweet enough. It's got to be a harmony, okay? And it took me a long time to get this harmony. And I wouldn't have ever gotten it like this had it not been for what Mom taught me. Thanks, Mom, I appreciate that. Her pecan pie is what pushed me forward. She's the one that taught me to put molasses in it. Guys, thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today, for watching this wonderful episode. And to my subscribers, I'd like to say a very special thank you to you guys and cheers. If you haven't subscribed, well folks, if you would, please do. I really appreciate that. That helps me a lot. Please like the video. When you click that thumbs up, again, that helps me a lot in the rankings and in how people find me on YouTube. So it's very beneficial, and I appreciate you doing that. Also, if you have comments, if you have questions, if you haven't noticed, I really do try to answer a lot of them, okay? So please, drop me a question or comment. I'll say hello to you. We'll all be having a good time. Thank you very much for watching Texas Cooking Today. And folks, if you would, one last thing, just have a good day. Bye-bye.